Hi everyone, it's Anya here and I'm back with another video for Ophelia Talks. And today I am making this item here. Now it is a book bag. So in here I am hiding a book. And I thought sometimes when you take a book on your travels, you often just put it in a bag. That's fine, but it gets damaged. So it's nice to be able to have it in a protective sleeve like this. And also it's nice to be able to carry it around like this. Now this one here really was my prototype. So we've got an oval base. Then I started just with waistcoat single crochets. But then I changed my mind. I wanted to bring more texture into our fabric that we were creating, and this is the fabric that we created. And then I made a flap and loops to attach to our buttons so it would stay closed. Now for the tutorial I wanted to improve on my book bag that I had already made, and I really needed a bag in which to keep my painting things when I'm traveling. So here I have made a smaller book bag, but of course I'm going to give you the amounts for the big one as well as the small one. And here I started doing the lovely structured stitches straight away. Let's get started for making these lovely bags, and I hope you will join me. And once again I am using just leftover yarns from my stash. I am mixing and matching yarn types, colors, but look what gorgeous objects we can make with these. For the small bag I am using clematis, cypress and whatever is left over of my Jamesy Bread MC74. For the large bag I used my Jamesy Bread MC74, and then I used some turquoise and also some emotions from the interest one, the EM10. I used my 4mm hook for these projects. You will also need buttons, a needle that will go through the hole of your buttons, and you will also need some stitch markers. Before you get started, measure the item or items that you are going to be wanting to put in your bag so you know how big to make it. And here are the measurements of my bag and also the amount of yarn in grams that you need for each bag. Of course, I'm working with leftovers, so just use whatever you've got really. So we're going to get started with doing our slip knot. And then we're going to chain. Now for this one I chained 28. And then we did sort of 2 rounds, and then that made it big enough for the book bag. And from this one here, I will have to see how much I'm going to chain. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10. And as you can see, I am using a 4mm hook. I am using quite a lot of strands, but I want it to be nice and tight, nice and a firm fabric. So that's why I'm using a hook that's really a little bit too small. So the reason why I am showing you all this is because I want you to be able to do this yourself. Of course, I don't know how big your book is going to be. I don't know what you want to put in your book bag. Okay, so I've got my painting materials here, but you might want to put something else in them. Yes, Layla is here. She's interested in what I'm doing. So come on, Layla. So I'm going to make sure I show you how to go about measuring it to your own items that you want to fit in there. So now I have made a chain. I already lost count, but that doesn't matter for now. I want to make sure that my chain is the width of whatever object I want to put in my book bag minus the corners. So of course we're going to add in the corners as well. So we need to take that into account. So we've got sort of like one little stitch missing here and one little stitch missing on this side. So that's the length that we need. Okay. And then we're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and then 15. Here is a knot, but I've just made sure it is a knot so I don't mistake it for a chain. Okay, so I've got 15 chains, and that's what I'm going to use for the base of my book bag here. And with doing the half circles on the edges, it will become a little bit bigger. So now we're going to chain 1. And in this last chain, so not the chain 1 because that's your turning chain, but in the 15th chain, you're going to go in, and I'm going to say just pick up a strand, okay? So when we work with multiple strands, you always consider these 3 strands as being one, but you have got to train your eye to make sure you are picking up those 3 strands all the time. Okay, so you go in there, and are there 3 there? Yes, there are. Okay, so that's fine. And then we are going to do, did I lose something here? Because of course in the beginning when you're doing this, it's a little bit awkward. You're going to do a single crochet, and into that same stitch you're going to do another single crochet, and another one, and you will see that that particular single crochet, look, see, I lost a strand there, so I've picked it up now. So that's 3 and a 4th one. So into that last chain you're going to place 4 single crochets. And now you're going to take your stitch markers, you're going to put a stitch marker in the last single crochet that you've just done, and also in the first one that you did. So 1, 2, 3, and this is the 4th one, this is the first one. Okay, voila. So this way you will know where you have to do your increases. Now we're going to work along the chain. We're going to continue, and because we had 15 stitches, we are going to use 2 of those for the corners, for the sides, and then 13 will be left over for your sides, for the long sides. So when you are working your stitches here for the big one, you will be doing 28 chains. You are going to use 26 chains for your single crochet sides, and then the first and the last one will become your corners where you place the 4 single crochets in there. Okay, so I'm now going to do 13 single crochets, and this might not be so easy to pick up this very first one because of course your 15th one did expand quite considerably because you have placed 4 single crochets in there. So I'm going to pick up what I can. So you're going to place 13 single crochets, and I will see you at the end. So this is where I am at now. This is my last chain here, and in there I'm going to place 4 single crochets. So into that first one I'm going to place another stitch marker to indicate that this is where my increases start. So now that we've got the stitch marker in there, we're going to continue with placing 3 more single crochets in there, 2 and the 3rd one there, voila. So I've now got 4 single crochets in that last chain. I'm going to place a stitch marker into the 4th one because then at least I know where my increases end. And now here I have got the ends hanging out, but I am going to take those along with me so I don't have to sew them in. So now we're doing 13 single crochets along the side here. So let's see. where is our first loop to pick up. Again, you need to make sure, yeah, you pick up the right one, because of course that first one there has now been expanded because we've put 4 in there. And now as well, it's not so easy anymore to get into these chains because of course they've already been used. So to get started on something like this is always a little bit of a battle, but it's worth it. Okay, so I lost a strand there. Voila, there we go. So I lay my ends here along my row, so I'm just taking those in with the stitch. There we go. Right, I will see you at the end of the row. So I have done my 12 single crochets on this side. I have done 13 on that side. My 13th one should be in here somewhere, but I also have to do a slip stitch. So I'm going to opt to do my slip stitch into that first single crochet here and just let it act as my 13th V. There we go. So this is now my 13th stitch. This is my first stitch, and I'm going to chain 1 because in that first stitch we are going to do an increase because that's where that stitch marker came in. So here, these 4 stitches here, we need to place 2 single crochets in each stitch. Did I lose or split something? Yes. So the first one and my second single crochet, and before I do anything else I'm going to take my stitch marker again and place it into my first single crochet there, so then at least I know where I started increasing. And then here we are going to be placing, yep, keep an eye on those strands, 2 single crochets. In the next stitch I'm also going to do 2 single crochets, and then here in the stitch with the stitch marker, that is going to be my last stitch where I am going to be placing 2 single crochets. Voila, 1 and 2. There we go. So that is my half circle increase done there. I'm going to add the stitch marker to the last stitch so I know where I finished increasing. And now I'm going to place 13 single crochets along the side. Then I will do the same increase ratio on the other side of my work there. And then I will do my 12 stitches along the side and I will meet you there. So I've done my 13 single crochets here, my increases here, so in total 8 single crochets, then 12 single crochets here. Once again, I should be doing a single crochet here. I'm not going to do that because I will use the slip stitch as its top. So I'm going to go under the first stitch and do a slip stitch to close the round. Now, this is wide enough for a good book. I'm just going to show you how to do the increase for another round, and in fact I'm thinking I want this wider than what it is now. I'm not going to be able to fit this 2 in and have this as well, so I want to make sure that I have a little bit of space to put everything in, so I'm just going to make it 1 row wider, and then in the meantime I will have shown you how to do an extra increase round here. So chain 1, and then we're going to do the increase for the 3rd round. So here we have the first 4 stitches, here we have the 2nd round increases, which is double, and then here we have the 3rd round increases. And the 3rd round increases are 1 single crochet in the first stitch, 2 single crochets in the second stitch, 1 and 2. And I am going to replace my stitch marker, although I don't need it anymore, it will now tell me when my row is finished, and also exactly which V it is that I'm going to be using for my, last stitch. So now, yeah, we continue with our increases. So 1, and then, yeah, I noticed that, and then 2. One and 2. And this will make our book bag a lot wider, and we'll be able to take a lot more sizes of books. There we go. So this is my last increase stitch, and indeed that ends in a increase, so I have to do 2 single crochets in there. Voila. And that's going to be the width of my book bag now. So I'm now going to continue with doing my single crochets on the side, then the same round 3 increase on this side here, and then we're going to do the single crochets on the long side, and I will meet you here. So make sure that your base is the width that you need. Here obviously I only did 2 rounds and it was wide enough for my book. Okay, so I have done my 12 single crochets here, not doing the 13th because this here, I indicated this as my first stitch there. We are now straight away going to be doing our next stitch for our side. So now we're going to treat this as the outside of our bag, and we're going to hold our work like this. This is going to become the inside, and we are going to get started straight away by picking up the back loop only of this first stitch, the stitch where we put that stitch marker, and doing a slip stitch. Then we do the chain 1, and in that same back loop we are going to place a single crochet. So I'm going to be placing a single crochet in the back loop of every stitch. Ideally you would want to pick up the 3rd loop as well, which is this strand here. Let me see if I can pick a few up. Yeah, that's okay. And bring that up and do a single crochet. But it's not easy with all these threads, it's not easy to do that. So you pick up the back loop, and then you go further down. These ones here, those are the ones that you also should try and pick up. I did not manage to do that in the book bag, and you can try and persevere. No, well, that's good enough. Normally it gives you a much nicer finish also on the inside, but for now, for here, I don't think it makes all that much difference. What you can do is sort of, instead of going like that with your hook under these 3 strands, let me do this stitch because I've done it now. Go in and sort of don't come up too soon. Go down, down, down. Look, I've got them. Okay, so try and do that. Sort of angling your hook down and don't come up too soon. There we go. Look at that. It is working. I think I've got something there as extra, not maybe not the whole 3rd loop, but there we go. It's good enough. Okay, and now you will see if you go like this that you will have an edge to stand up. Also, as you can see, this is all curly. That's normal. Okay, you can push it down and that's fine. We just need to train it to be what we need it to be. Here, let's see, let's pull this end. There we go, it's gone in a little bit more there. We have taken these ends along, so you could now either sew them in more or just cut them off. I'm going to cut them off, and that way they have been dealt with. but you need to do this now, because once you start going round and round and up, it's harder to get down in there, and you don't really want to go and be turning it inside out because you might lose some of its shaping. So there we go. So this is where we are at now. So you're going to do a whole round of a single crochet, back loop, and if you can possibly manage to pick up this strand as well, the third loop. So good luck, and I will see you at the end of the round. No, didn't pick them up there. Never mind, try again. Yeah, I think I have something. Okay, I'll see you at the end of the round. Right, so I have made it to the end of the round here. Once again, I've done my 12, not doing my 13th, but here is my first stitch, and I am going to start going around in spirals. So that's going to make life a little bit easier, and we need a multiple of 2 in our stitches. I have not counted my stitches. I don't know if this is a multiple of 2. I am not going to count my stitches. I'm going to just sort it out when I get there. If it works out, it works out. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Now, let me show you here. It did not work out. Had you noticed? I don't think you have. Because here, look, it didn't work out. So I had to do an extra stitch. But did you see that? No. And I am not going to worry about things like that. I want to enjoy my crochet. I'm just going to make it work out. The first stitch here, we're going to pick up the back loop and do a single crochet. Then in the next stitch, we're going to go into the stitch itself, and we're going to go under the V. This is where you normally pick up, but we're going to go down even lower than that, and we're going to go through the body of the stitch and pick it up like that. So this is what I call the waistcoat stitch. Now we're going to do a back loop only, single crochet, and then in the next stitch you're going to do a waistcoat stitch. And the waistcoat stitch gives that impression as if it was knitted. So then the next stitch, back loop only. Yeah. And then the next stitch, waistcoat stitch, lower down than where you usually go. Voila. So in fact, let me show you, because I think I can show you here. This is a freshly made single crochet, and this in fact is a location where you're going to go in. So in between the two, see there, that's where you're going to go in to make your waistcoat stitch. So back loop only, and then of course you skip the stitch that you have done into here for your waistcoat stitch. And of course it's not going to be so easy to see this every time, but you know where you should be going into, so just press your hook into there and hope for the best, I would say. I know this is not expert tutorial material here, you know, hope for the best, press it in, but you know, I like to make things fun here. There we go. Now you won't see the effect of this straight away, but I think you can see it here. Here I was doing just waistcoat stitch, and although that looks nice, and you can also do that, I then changed my mind and I thought, what if I did back loop only, then waistcoat stitch? And I think the effect is just lovely. So you can see there is a lovely structure to this bag, to this fabric, and I really enjoy that. I'm going to keep going for a number of rounds, and as we are now spiraling, you are going to just have to make sure that you finish your round, and when you get back to here, make sure that you place a waistcoat stitch above a waistcoat stitch. and a back loop only onto a back loop only. It will be offset slightly, but you will still be able to find the next waistcoat. Back loop, waistcoat, back loop, waistcoat. Okay, so this is how you're going to continue to make sure you get these lines. So when you're doing this, make sure you don't now use this one for your waistcoat, but in fact it's this one. Okay, so you have got to travel along your line, making sure that you advance each time doing your stitches. And look at this. This is where I am at now, and I have to say I am liking the effect. So when I finished my first round of doing the back loop and waistcoat, back loop and waistcoat single crochets, it worked out. So I was able to do a back loop single crochet and then start with spiraling up, of course, the next row with doing a waistcoat single crochet. Now, if that hadn't been the case, I would have just done another back loop single crochet and off I went. I wouldn't have worried about that, but then of course you would have to have done the same all the time. Okay, so from now on you are putting the same stitch on top of the same stitch, and that way of course you are creating this kind of effect. Now what's important as well is that you keep an eye on your progress, and also is this big enough for what you intend it to, because of course here with my book I made sure each time that my book fitted in it to make sure that, you know, it was fit for purpose, of course. And now here I've got my painting stuff. Does it fit in? Yeah, if I put my hook out of the way, it might do. And yes, it does fit in. It fits quite snugly. There is a little bit of space here, maybe for a pencil, for another brush that I might want to bring, so that's perfect. So now I'm going to continue working rounds until I have just managed to get past the contents of my bag. And look at this. So I kept on doing rounds, and look, it's level with my contents. I am so happy, and I have to say I am in love with the colors as well as this effect these stitches have given me. Oh my goodness, how lovely is this? So now that everything is level here, we are going to get started on the flap. So here, this is the location where I started spiraling, because this was the end of my base, and here I started going round and round in spirals. So this here is just about where I want to finish. I did a couple of extra stitches because I want to be at the outermost points of sort of like the back of my bag here. Okay, so you want to make sure that the flap that we're going to create is going to, of course, lay over all of this and is not going to create a gap. So we need to make sure that if you look at it like a rectangle like this, that in fact we are at the corner there. Okay, so from now on we're going to go back and forth. So now we are ready to start crocheting again. So here I am going to do a chain one, turn, and this time we're going to work in the front loop only, because we want to make a little bit of an edge on the outside of our bag. That means we have to leave this strand here of the V unworked, and that means as we are now turning that the V that's the closest to us, the strand of the V, is going to be the front one. So that's what we're going to be using. And because of course we are now on the other side, we won't be able to do our same stitches. So to get started, I'm just going to do a row of front loop single crochets. So starting in that very fast stitch where your chain is coming out of, you're going to be picking up the front loop, and this is what it's going to be looking like. You will have a line of yarn, of strands lying there. Voila. So I'm now going to go to the location here where I believe I'm going to be at the sort of, the cornermost location there. So I will meet you there. Okay, so I've made it to where I think is going to be sort of like the, the point where I want to place my last stitch, sort of at the outermost edge there. I have placed them in the front loops, and because of that, you almost create sort of a natural bend in your fabric here. Look, so this is where we're going to be having a seam, just like we did here, really. So to indicate that this is where our fabric is now going to fold forward. So really we need to just continue now with a couple of rows of single crochets in both loops this time, until your little flap here is wide enough to cover the opening of your bag. So you chain one, you turn, and you start doing your single crochet under both the strands of the V. And you work rows like that until your little flap is wide enough to cover the top, like here. So I am running out of yarn, so I am going to add some more because I have more of this, but I don't have any more of this chunky marble. So I found some of these impressions, which is about the same color. So I'm going to just use that because the point is I wanted to use up things here. So I'm not going to start a new ball or ask Dirk to bring me a new ball, because that's the whole point of the exercise, is to use up what we have got. So as you can see, I just pulled through with the old color and then I used the new part to finish the stitch. Here I have now lots of ends, and to make sure I don't have to sew them in, I'm just going to lay them across my work here, and I'm going to crochet around them. So I'm making my stitches extra tight now so that they wouldn't be too much bigger from the others, of course, because now I have all these strands there that I'm trying to take along as well. And there we go. And the ends here that are still hanging out, I'm just going to cut those off because we have been taking them along since there, and I think that's far enough. Voila, and that solves the problem of having to sew in the ends. So I'm now going to continue with doing my rows. And here we are. I think my flap is wide enough, so I've done 6 rows, and in fact my base also has 6 rows, so that means it is as wide at the top as it is at the base. And as you can see, my flap is now just wide enough to take all the contents that I need. So now we're going to go and start the second part of the flap. So I'm going to put my hook back in, chain 1, turn, and this time we want to keep this back loop as our little ridge, and so once again we are going to be working in the front loop. So let's see if we can pick up the front loop again. And this is what it's looking like, and again you've got sort of this little bend happening so that things will turn out the way we want them to be, because we want that to go down a little bit over the front of our bag. And I will see you at the end of the row. So here I have now done my first row of single crochets for the little flap here. As you can see, it's bending down quite nicely. So now I need to do another 3 rows. Then in the 4th row we will finish off with making the little rounded edges here and the loops for the buttons. So come back to me when you are ready to do your last row here, so the 5th row if you count this one as well, and I will show you how to finish off your flap. So this is my flap, and yes, it all fits in really nicely. So now I'm ready to do that last row where we're going to round the corners and make 2 loops for our buttons. So let's get started. I'm going to do my chain here, and then you turn. And I've got everything in there now. I'm not sure if that's going to work, but never mind. And then we're going to go into the first stitch, we pull up a loop, and then into the second stitch and we pull up a loop, and we finish these together. So we do 2 single crochets together in the first stitch, and then we're going to continue with doing our single crochets as we have been used to. And now, of course, we're going to have to work out where we're going to place those buttons. So you'll just have to count how many stitches you've got. Make sure that you sort of, you know, nicely divided over the front of your bag. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. No, that's too close together, there and there. Okay, so I'm going to be placing my buttons there. So here I'm going to do, so I've used 3 stitches, 4, 5, 6, 7 stitches. Yeah. And then here I'm going to count 7 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And that brings me there as well. Okay, and then I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 left. That's fine. So work yourself in the same amount of stitches. So if you do 7 here, then you'll have to do this here the second time, 7 from the end, of course. So we've done 3. I'm going to do 4 more. And for the large book bag, you're going to have to do a similar kind of construction where you count in, but of course do a few more stitches so it looks right for the larger size. And now I'm going to do a loop that you can make as long as you want, depending on where you're going to position your button. If you're going to put it here, you're going to have to make it much longer, but I don't think that will be very effective. So we're going to place the button about there, sort of a little bit lower down, so you can make a nice loop, and I think of about 15 chains. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 and 15. Having the button there, I think that would give me a nice look. It's about a finger thickness away from my flap there. So I think that will be nice. So 15 chains. And then you are going to go back into that last single crochet like this. You go around it and you make a slip stitch, voila, just to attach the loop, and then you continue and you do the amount of stitches. What did we say? 8. That would leave you with the same number of stitches, 7, like we did here. So let me just do that, and then we will do the same process again. So we have 2, 4, 6, 7, and let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I'm going to do 1 more. So that's my 8 stitches in the middle. Yeah, I think that's okay. And now I'm going to do my first stitch, because we're going to have to connect it to that, and then do our 1, 2, 12, 13 and 14 and 15. And then we do that slip stitch around the single crochet there. Voila, so that's on our 7th stitch, and now we do the rest of our stitches, and then the last ones we're going to take together. Voila, there we go. We'll have to sew in these ends, but at least we have avoided having to sew in more ends by taking those other ones along there. So for sewing in the ends into this kind of fabric, I do use a sharp needle because otherwise it's just impossible to get into it. So also I make sure I use one thread, then go into the fabric like so, and making loop the loops around the strands that I find. Do this for a certain length or until you've used up the whole of your yarn, and then of course you'll have to repeat that for the other threads. Okay, so to sew on the button, and I have done one just now and it went really well, so let's see how it goes when I film it. So this time I am using a needle which is not that sharp, but the main thing about this one is that it has a big eye and it goes through the holes of my button, so that's why I keep this needle for that. And this one works really well, so make sure you have a needle that goes through the holes of your button. And we said we were going to put the button on this ridge here where we have made our loop. So approximately in that location. Now the thing is, there's nothing in there. That's not a good thing, okay? So put the stuff that you're going to have in your bag inside. Then close your flap and then position the button, okay? So as you can see, this one, yeah, that's the good position because it works really well. But here, well, it didn't, but yeah, it does. But here, if this was our first button location, then I would put my button about there with the holes near there, near the edge of this loop here, okay? And we're going to go and put the button on that location. Then underneath there you're just going to go in and come back out. You just need the yarn to be connected to the bag, and it just needs to be in that location there, okay? Then we're going to take the button, go in and come back out, okay? And then we go back to our location here and we go into the fabric again. And we bring up the button. There we go. Okay. You just need to get started in a way. And this way we've started. And if this one wasn't there, then now I would do the second part of the button. So the second lot of holes. Go through there, come back out. And now I would try it. So it's not too late yet to undo this. I mean, you can always just cut it off, of course, if it's not in the right place. But look, voila, we've got everything in it. It's closing nicely, and that's where we need it to be. So this one here is tighter still than this one, obviously, because I have done what I've done here twice here. So this one is nice and tight. This one, of course, we need to finish off, but we know now that it's in the right place. So now I make sure I end so my yarn is inside. I turn it inside out slightly so I have the space here to do some sewing in. So this end here, we're just going to bring that to the inside of our bag. There we go. And we sew it in here. Voila. There we go, and we cut this off. And this is our finished bag. So now it is time to put everything in. There we go. Voila. And close our bag. And oh my goodness, I have really enjoyed making this bag and also this one here. So I hope I have inspired you to make these bags. This is a nice book bag. This is a nice bag to put anything in really that you need, that you want to keep together in a nice neat bag. And the best thing about this is really we are using leftover yarns. Yarns that would otherwise sit on our shelf and not be used. Look at these wonderful items we have made. I hope you enjoyed this project. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!